You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin de Chleirigh.
And me, Paul Brophy. And today, Roisin, we're joined by political activist and former independent candidate at the general election there last year, Luke O'Connor. Luke, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I suppose, Luke, we're standing outside Kilkenny County Council, who on Monday became the first county council to pass
in Ireland,
to pass a motion where they agreed to write to both the Minister for Justice and the Minister for Housing on their disagreement with the fact that IPAS centres are exempt from planning permission.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We were ecstatic, first of all, that Councillor Shortall prepared the motion. It was a real victory for a lot of people who kind of plowed a lonely furrow over the years here in Kilkenny, protesting kind of IPAS. A lot of negative connotations had been put on those people, and we felt they were vindicated. We were vindicated by the fact that motion was passed, and we were delighted with it. And to be honest, it's really it's brilliant to see that ordinary people can really make lasting change to their locality and to the political positions of a lot of the political parties in there.
It was unanimously accepted.
Yeah, unanimously, as you say, unanimously accepted. And like what was so brilliant about the motion was that it crystallized most people's problem with the IPAS system, and that is the unfairness of having ordinary people like us pay for big developers to enrich themselves off the back of the immigration industrial complex. And ordinary people get that. The councillors in there, in fairness, they voted their conscience. The problem is there's now a disconnect between the councillors, what they think, what the rest of us think. We're all in agreement now, and the political parties and what they're actually enforcing. So I think over the next few years there's going to be a split. You're going to see the political parties mainstream political parties become more disenfranchised from the people, and it's going to lead to splits. It's going to lead to fractures within the mainstream, and I think you're going to have more populist alternatives emerging.
Right. And
when you say populist politics emerging, can you explain that?
So what I would say, what I would define as a populist is someone who rallies against the kind of elitism that we saw in the IPAS system, in that big developers get rich off our backs. We're struggling to make ends meet, and on the flip side of that, you have people coming here who, whether they're well-intentioned or some of them not well-intentioned, they come here, free accommodation, free food, some of them get phones, they get all these kind of benefits, and then there's people here, locals, who are really struggling for any kind of support system,
And too, a lot of people have been contacting the Irish Political Roundup about the the single men and the groups of single men that are coming. Where are the families? Where are the wives? And there was a lady in another social media, SND, I think it was. I could stand to be corrected on that. Often Letterkenny, and she said, "Where's your wife? Where's your family?" And he said, "Oh, they're back home." So, and he came over because he thought because he was bisexual, so he came over. That is not a legitimate reason for fleeing your country, and single men coming over in groups.
Yeah, and I get messages a lot of the time, particularly from women, saying that they don't feel safe, and I don't like making a big thing about it in terms of, because there's such an economic aspect to this that I think gets lost. That's really impacting the country. So a lot of people, they make a lot of it. We feel unsafe in our communities, and that's a huge issue. But unfortunately, the way our media, the mainstream media, is set up is that as soon as you raise that point, you're blacked out. They're blacked out. They completely black out. Whereas what was so brilliant about Councillor Maurice Shortall, he's tackled the economic issue that I've been talking about for years. Economic nationalism, the idea that ordinary people in the country are being let down by an elite that are prioritising foreign interests over locals' interests, Irish interests, and that was what was so, it crystallised the unfairness that every single person in the country can see about IPAS, whatever your views about immigration,
So tell us about Councillor Maurice Shortall's proposal.
Yeah, so essentially he wants to, the council are going to write to both the Minister for Housing and the Minister for Justice to want to put to an end this kind of planning exemption that IPAS have for the multimillionaires who are enriching themselves. It's something 90%, 99% of people agree with, and it also goes to the heart of something in terms of housing as well. Is that we're on track now at the moment. I was listening to Ivan Yates there last week. We're on track now to build less houses than we built last year. And a lot of that is to do with an ideological position that the government have about house building as well. And like I'm not anyone's idea of a socialist, but what I'm saying is that there needs to be kind of more of a kind of mix and match kind of approach to how the government are doing things. Years like someone told me there was a guy from Durrow yesterday. He owns a painting company, and he was telling me like in the 70s. They were building more houses than they were now, but it was all local authorities.
Yeah, I think they built nearly 100,000 houses over
Crazy
a
when you think
4-year
about it.
period in the middle of a massive recession at the time. So even in the 1930s, we built huge county council estates across the country. So we can do these things when we had no money. Why can't we do it when we do have money?
That's the thing as well. It's like whenever any of these big issues come up now, the pressure that's going to be on the government is, but why can't we have a COVID-style response? We were able to have the COVID-style response during COVID. I didn't think the COVID-style response was that necessary. I actually think the housing response is more important. There's going to be questions. These questions are going to keep coming up, and I just think that what we saw behind us here in the council chamber during the week is a sign of things to come, and I'm just happy that it happened in Kilkenny, to be quite honest.
So, Councillor Maurice Shortall, his bill, what was the name of the bill, and what did it say?
The name of the bill is so what it said was that they're going to write to the two ministers, and like let's be real as well. The council, it's more of a symbolic thing than anything. Writing to the two ministers. The two ministers are from the party, the majority in there. But what it does show is that there is fractures emerging. And I suppose the bill itself is more symbolic in nature. But what I think it will show is that these fractures are deep, and I think over the next 5 years, next 10 years, you're going to see alternatives to these political parties because, like the Labour Party in Britain, who pulled itself apart over Brexit, these political parties are going to pull themselves apart over immigration, because you're going to see, particularly TDs in working class areas. We saw Paul Murphy during the week. Paul Murphy is now as big an anti-IPAS campaigner as I am. So
and who would have thought that?
Who would have thought that?
Yeah,
and as long as it wasn't in his area.
Yeah, a week is a long time in politics, isn't it?
And I suppose we've seen this happen in other countries as well. We've seen it in, like I said, Denmark and Sweden, and even like the Mediterranean. We've seen immigration. So, in one sense, was it inevitable that it was going to happen here in Ireland, the way things were going?
It is inevitable, but at the same time, is that the problem that we have in establishing alternatives here in Ireland is probably, we're a relatively young country. We have that kind of civil war stranglehold over the politics. Like I found during the elections last year, like the majority of people agree with you. It's just the fact that they're married to kind of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, or if you're Sinn Féin House or whatever. But I think what's very important is young voters. I think young voters are going to be very important in the next few elections, because you're seeing all across the Western world, young men are becoming more nationalist, more right-wing, and young women are becoming more kind of left-wing populists, especially on the social issues.
Yes.
There's a real dichotomy there. And I think that's going to be interesting to watch in Irish politics going forward. I think any populist, be it on the left or the right, that can mobilise vast swathes of young voters, I think is going to really get a really, strong kind of machine, political machine there,
And the economics. We're living in a cost of living crisis. Doctors can't even afford to get a mortgage. They can't even afford rent. This is doctors. And we're living in a cost of living crisis. And as you said, this is about the economics. The IPAS, the planning permissions, it's all about economics. And so an awful lot of people are saying, well, how come you've got these selected millionaires really capitalizing on the immigration, getting millions for it, and you've got, it's really affected now the, let's say, the middle class area, because they are finding that their children are going to college, they're going to universities, they're getting degrees, and even doctors, engineers, and lawyers cannot afford to buy a house, get a mortgage.
Yeah, I suppose it's becoming a real middle class problem now. I remember reading during COVID about a group of people in Japan post World War. I think they were called the Nishikori. So this was a group of people who, post-war Japan, weren't bright enough to go to the top level schools, and but they were kind of left in a middle, a squeezed middle. They weren't low enough to do the working class jobs, and essentially what you ended up with was, it's very sad, like a class of people all in the same age bracket in their mid-40s, living in their parents' box rooms, no job, no prospect of a family, and that's an increasing reality in Ireland,
And the birth rate has gone
The
down.
birth rate has gone down, and that's that's all due to the housing crisis, really. And the fact that a lot of our young people are going abroad, and that's
and not coming back
not
because
coming back.
of the tax, the cost of living crisis. They can't get a mortgage, and when they come back, with the money that they've made in Australia, New Zealand, America, with the exchange rate, they're going to lose their money, and then they're coming back to a higher cost of living and not being able to get somewhere to live.
And if you look at even the last number of months, for like a period of time, you were saying there were people coming into the country that were destroying their documents. You were totally laughed and scoffed at for that. Now that is accepted as that it is happening. There were absolutely no deportations taking place. They are starting to take place, only in the last while, but they are starting to take place. Do you think that the government is kind of shifting their stance on immigration? Because you hear a lot of this, we want a firm, fair, efficient system. We never heard that 5-6 years ago.
This is a great question. And basically, what I think is that this government is the David Cameron government pre-Brexit, in Britain.
Okay.
So it's like very slick. Presentation is good. They're saying all the right things, but it's all rhetoric. Dominic Cummings, who led the Leave campaign for Brexit, he does some fantastic articles talking about, like politics is becoming like professional wrestling.
Sorry.
Whereas like you basically have ministers who are there as heads of these titular roles of government, but they're not controlling the brief, and it's the civil servants that are actually controlling the brief. The politicians have actually become actors, and I think and it goes to all levels of politics. I use that analogy particularly when it comes to Kilkenny in the two-way system.
Yes.
That was a takeover by the civil servants behind me here over the politicians, and the politicians, they sold it to the people over, it's a measure for COVID, and then said, it'll be coming back. It hasn't come back, and I think it's been a disaster for Kilkenny, and like this idea that because someone is called an expert, like I think some of the planning, particularly in Kilkenny, has just been so awful. Like I live on the Granges Road there. There's 3 crossings in the space of there's actually 4 in the space of about 100, less than 150 meters. it's harder for me to cross the road to go into my house now than it was when we had one crossing. Do you know what I mean? Because all the cars have to slow. You know, they're staggered slows. Like,
and come September, you're looking at three big schools on the one stretch of road. So that's going to cause problems.
It's a disaster. But that's all born from unaccountable bureaucrats, and that's actually a lot of what Cummings talked about when he was talking about leaving the EU. You know, it was that it's the unaccountable power. You know, like if someone makes a planning decision in there and it's just rubber stamped by the council. Like no one's really accountable for that, are they? Because the councillors are going to say, "Oh well, the expert up in planning told us that this was the plan." So we all said that was no. You're elected to make the decisions, like, you know.
And Luke, you know, I first heard your name in 2019. You ran for the local elections in 2019, and then you ran again in 2024. And then you ran in the general election last November 2024. You have been, everything that you have said now with this motion within Kilkenny County Council has validated everything that you've said since your local elections 2019. You have been intimidated. You have been bullied. Things that have been said about you, and posters along. Paul and I remember.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Posters with really unnice things said on the posters with your face. You're a racist and blah blah blah. You took a lot of flack personally.
Yeah.
You stood your ground to your morals, your political and social morals and integrity. How did you feel when it was reported that Councillor Maurice Shortall bill was unanimously passed and all the county councillors agreed with the bill?
Yeah, I was happy, but more than myself, I was happy for the people who stood with us on we had some dark days around here. Stephen Delaney, who's with us today, like, to me, he's the kind of the symbolic, you know, organizer of all the kind of big events that we had, you know, and without Stephen, you know, it would have been possible, but without anyone who turned up, it wouldn't have been possible, you know. And I'm just happy for those people. And, like, you know, anytime someone passes me in the street and, you know, they want to talk about things that are going on, and, you know, they're saying, you know, we're on the right track, you know, it gives me a big boost, you know, but because you get a lot of the opposite way as well, you know. But look, that's life, you know. You have to. I always think you have to make a stand. You don't stand for something you believe in nothing, you know, that kind of way, and that's the way it is, you know.
And because you're about the same age as my son,
yeah,
you know, and I always thought, oh God, the same age, and you went to the same school as my son, so I've always thought, you know, God, you know, he's only young, and, you know, and things like that. But you know, you stood to your morals and you stood to your political values. And Stephen, would you like to join us and talk about as well what this means to you? Because what you have both done is set a precedence now for the rest of Ireland, through your work and then through the work of Councillor Maurice Shortall. It set a precedent now for other county councillors. And when the county councillors, one thing Paul and I have learnt is the power of county councillors, the power of senators, and but most of all politics is local and starts at grassroots.
Absolutely.
So your work and the work now of Councillor who's moved on the work and taken it into the county council, you've set a precedent now for Ireland. How do you feel about that?
Well, I suppose the way I look at it is this: me and Maurice ran against each other in North Kilkenny, and I actually ran into an auntie of his on the campaign trail, and I just said, "Look, I heard." She said, "Maurice is my nephew, and, you know, nice to meet you." And I said, "Well, your nephew's running as an independent," I said, "and I'll be telling everyone that is considering voting for me, who ran on, let's say, a hardcore nationalist ticket. I'll be telling everyone to give their number 2s to Maurice." And another candidate in the field, name is slipping the net now. He ran for independent.
Oh, Daniel Burke.
Daniel Burke, that's it.
We interviewed him here on the Irish Political Roundup.
He also did the same. He said to everyone, Maurice Shortall, if you're going to vote for me, give him the number 2. And Maurice actually got across the line. If you go back and look at them transfers,
That's right, yeah.
he got across the line in one of the biggest transfers of its kind. It's really unusual, and he got in there. And we're so lucky that all of our collective effort has led to Maurice getting there, because Maurice is one of the most impressive individuals you've ever met in your life. I suppose you've talked to him, I'm not sure, a little bit, but anyone that has talked to him, there's not an ounce of politics, there's not an ounce of anything that at all. He's just like he is the parish pump. You've heard of parish pump politics. He is the parish pump. He talks to anyone, gets along with everyone. I've never heard him hold a particular political position, to be honest. He's always talking about the effects of things on people he knows around him and what's been said to him. And me and Luke have actually met him a few times. I wouldn't say we've lobbied him or anything like that. So this isn't like a direct result of me and Luke screaming down the phone to Maurice. But what it is it's a direct result of the people coming out in Ballyragget that time, where Maurice chaired a meeting. He was asked to do it by people in Ballyragget. Everybody actually came out. So what's actually happening here, what we're finding out with independent councillors with no party whip above them, that they can just go out and chair these meetings. Whereas, let's say, I could name, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, all these people. They can't just chair these meetings. They want to. We know now they want to, but they can't. And when Maurice chaired those meetings, the genie came out of the bottle. The cat came out of the bag. And what happened all around Kilkenny is, and you can see in Durrow the other day, the entire locale is coming out against these slumlord millionaires. It's not particularly against foreigners. I'll admit it, some people are anti-foreigner. They're part of the mix. But what you'll find out is, if you do it in an official way with a councillor like Maurice Shortall, where he'll table a meeting or something like that, or his equivalent in Laois did this, what you'll find out is that the local scumbag millionaire is not actually that very well liked. Nobody really appreciates him using IPAS money to replicate another IPAS centre and using that money to create another one. Everyone sees what's happening. It's a scam, and Maurice is the guy. That's the template, and all the other councils are now under pressure because Maurice just said, "Do you agree with me?" And everyone in there said yes. But it seems to me like they would be under pressure to not table that motion. So what does that tell you at home? What does that tell you guys here? It says that by voting for an independent, you actually got motions tabled that you'd never see within the establishment system. And that's the value in Maurice Shortall for me. I think he's the best councillor in the country at the minute, and big things are coming from him. Absolutely.
Well, he certainly has set a precedent now for other county councillors, and maybe will go down in Irish history. And there's the bells when we just said that, and definitely, guys, you two should also go down in their history books, because you, as you said, you told, you did the, you were actually standing on the wall like Michael Collins one night up with the IPAS Centre up the road. I drove past. And
I think the only similarity between me and Collins is a few lads would like to see me shot, but that's
definitely more of a devil air, I'd say.
But Michael Collins, he got up on walls and he spoke to the people, and it's good to see that local politics of local people is what politics is about. It's not just about the elitism of politics, but as we say here, Paul, on the Irish Political Roundup, all politics is local, and grassroots.
And it has to be, I think, for our country to actually pull our way out of this, has to start in the local level. I'm actually bulling for the next local elections to get behind someone like Maurice, run myself, push a few leaflets in the door for Luke, because we can see the value of it now. We done it when we didn't see the end line of this. We now see that Maurice got in and done it. So I'll say this to everyone that watches this: get active in your local area. All the people that were active here in Kilkenny, I'm going to name a few first names, I won't say full names, but there was Michael, Darren, Jerry, a couple of the women there as well. I won't mention a few names, it'd be very obvious who they were, but in the background working away on this, especially in the Johns Hall protest when we camped out up there a few nights, and the big protest that day. The actual demographic of people that came together that day was hardline Sinn Féiners, hardline Fine Gaelers, hardline Fianna Fáilers, hardline Labour people came up there. Members of political families in the town came up to us. I'm not going to mention names just out of respect for them, but they actually came up to us and stood beside us together in a congregation, just totally against this crap, And so, just to throw his name in there again, Maurice got in there with no pressure on his back, no politics falling out of his pocket like myself. I have politics oozing out of me of a certain kind. So does Luke. Maurice doesn't have that. He just went straight in and tables these types of motions. He's going to table more. He has. I think Maurice is going to take over this council in years to come. I think the parties are going to be after his signature, to be honest, because of his capability. I'm going to say, Maurice, stay independent. And that's probably my opinion on it there.
Yeah. And when you were talking to those people at the Pro who come from those, big political families, how did they see, how things were going, in the sense that how did the political parties respond to what's happening? Can they, or are we going to see kind of more independence and, as Luke said, more kind of populist parties starting to emerge?
Well, Luke mentioned the populist party emerging and the split within the parties. If you look at the UK, what's after happening, the Tory party has collapsed, and in an effort to rescue itself, the rats fleeing the ship are joining Reform, which started out as populist. It's now moving towards more mainstream. You're looking in America at the Republican Party eating itself alive now over the type of politics that's coming out, the type of promises that were made during the election, what's happening after. It's two different things. So the Republican Party is falling apart. The Democrat Party is dead.
Yeah.
There's definitely a vacuum for populist. In other words, ordinary people who champion, like Maurice, local issues. What Maurice done was let's say a populist thing. You're going to see more people do just really regular things, and we're all going to be scratching our head going, where was this the last 20 or 30 years?
Politics?
Common sense, yeah. People are going to start seeing things like why couldn't Andrew McGuinness table this motion? Why couldn't David Fitzgerald table this motion? Why didn't they table these motions? Why does an independent have to do it? And then they just dive on the yes. They absolutely broke the buttons in there to say, saying yes to this thing. We all know their opinions on it, and like you said, the families that came up, what did they say? They're telling us what these people really think. These are people related to these people. These are people who work with these people, married into these families. They tell us what they think. They are all against us, but they're trapped by careerism. And I suppose I often talk about the pyramid scheme of when you're in the parties now. The Dáil isn't the top level job anymore. It's Europe. Right. It's supranational institutions. It's it's the World Health Organization now. Drawing in people like Michael Ryan or whatever his name is. That guy, and now he's looking for a big job somewhere else. There's a whole ladder for these people to climb.
Right.
And I think what Maurice is doing is saying, I don't want the ladder. I'm here, and I'm not applying for any other job. So that's what we need to we need to find these people and push them back into politics again.
And find the people who will be the voice of the people, represent the people at local level, and be the voice and create that platform for them to actually have that space where they can bring that politics back to local and represent local people, local people's issues and what local people want.
Yeah, I suppose I'll try to hit the ball back over the net to Luke on this one here, just about the local politics thing, because I'm always at Luke about what's the next thing we're doing. I'm very kind of like the dog waiting at the door to go chase a tennis ball, but Luke is very much more reserved, so I think he'll give a better answer on this.
Yeah, no, I suppose going forward, I just think that we need to be focused on issues like I was talking about earlier about the two-way system. Simple issues that could really that could end up saving a business. Could be the difference between a business staying in shape or going bust, and because to me issues like that are crucial. Now, and look, I'm not one to run Kilkenny down. I think they did a marvelous job there on the Lacan walk. And there have been some good strides made around the social housing you know, at council level. But like, I keep going back to the fact that I don't like to see civil servants running things, and I think that happens an awful lot. I think, and a lot of the motions that I see, unlike Councillor Shortall's, a lot of the motions that I see going in there, you know, about Israel Palestine, whatever you think about Israel or Palestine, I don't think it's the local council's job to put in a submission about it, you know, and you know, I have sympathy for the people of Palestine, you know, but like, it's Kilkenny County Council, you know. At the end of the day, we're supposed to be looking after the people here, you know. That should be the main priority, and that's something Councillor Shortall has done very well. And I just think that a lot of good candidates, local candidates around the country, people like Nick Delahunty, people like Elaine Mullally, you know, people like Gavin Pepper, a lot of those people would be very, very well served just focusing on local issues like that, that are, you know, they're not the sexiest issues in the world, they're not earth shattering, but they're very important because, you know, I just think this government is for the birds, you know, in terms of focusing on bread and butter issues. And I just think if you can make that impact at local level, you know, that, you know, we're going to focus on simple economic issues that are going to make your life a small bit easier, a small bit more manageable. You know, I think that it's a very stark contrast between that and, you know, the referendum on women in the home, you know.
Yeah.
And do you think there's a lot of talk in America where they're saying, as you mentioned, Stephen, about the Republicans and Democrats, that I was listening today and talking to someone that they were saying that there might not be any Republicans or Democrats. It will be a completely different political system going forward. And maybe it won't be, there might not be any political parties. There might be just everybody in there to do the job and get done, and maybe elections every 2 years for people at national level and maybe even local level. Do you think politics will change?
Yeah, well, it's America's probably the one country you could do that because, you know, in America, you know, anyone can run for Senate. You know what I mean? You know, like your man from Tiger King ran for governor of whatever state he was in. You know, like that's, you could do that in America. The problem with Ireland is, you know, our system was designed by, you know, people coming from civil war. A lot of the things that they did were to protect the elites within the system. You know, a case in point is, you know, the Irish presidency. Like, in my opinion, anyone over the age of 35 should be able to run for president of Ireland. You know, but it's ridiculous that's not the case. You know, like the restrictions of 4 county councils / 20 members of the Oireachtas is very, very elitist, and it's wrong. You know, so things like that. You know, our system is created, you know, to really, like, we saw it as a run as independents in the local and the general elections. You know, you're up against the party machine. You know, and everyone's kind of protected by the machine and wants to protect the machine. We're kind of disruptors, you know, and I suppose it's a lot harder to get things going from our point of view. You know, we're up against it in terms of resources, in terms of you know, manpower. You know, but slowly but surely we're seeing changes. We're seeing a lot more people, like the people I mentioned, gaining more traction. And, you know, I think the future is bright if people stay the course. You know, it's a very dark period in the country's history now. That's the way I look at it. You know, and, like, you know, like, even like America before or during the Civil War, like, you know, Abraham Lincoln. You know, you could hardly see a ray of hope. You know, that was Abraham Lincoln. You know, and, like, truth is here too. You know, as hard as things might be now, you know, there's always hope that things might get a small bit better. You know.
Well, Luke O'Connor, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to come and speak, and you, Stephen, Delaney, thank you both for taking the time to come and speak to the Irish Political Roundup, to Paul Brophy and myself. We really appreciate it because we like to tell the political story and the story of people involved behind the scenes and people maybe who did things before things like this this bill motion went through, because it's all about a ripple effect.
Thanks so much for having us, guys.
I'll just say thanks again, lads, and what you're actually doing is invaluable. I can actually tell you, you're getting more well known than you think.
Really?
Yeah, I've had people from all over the country ask me, do I know you guys? Because they've seen, like, say, our interview on the local elections.
Oh, right.
And they ask me, do I know you, or could I put you in touch with you, or whatever it is.
Really?
People on the other side of the fence even have actually messaged me about it. Say to me, like, politically. And, everyone says it's actually like a refreshing kind of a media thing, because it's no nonsense, It's you give great coverage here in the locals. You actually put pressure, I believe, on KCLR, Kenny people, to actually talk to me and Luke. Without ye talking to us, they wouldn't. I can pretty much say that for a fact, because ye were out there putting us in the public eye. They had to do it too with their framing,
Yeah.
That's my belief. So I'd say thanks very much, and keep plowing on. Keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely, and thanks very much. And I'm sure, Roisin, you'd agree with me that on the Irish Political Roundup, we value every opinion, and we believe that every opinion should be given airtime and space to let it be seen. And look, if you look at how things have progressed, who would have thought 5-6 years ago we would have been even talking about something like this? So there is definitely a case for allowing more voices out into the political discourse.
It used to be years ago. It used to be. And then I left local media. I mean, there was no balance in two opposing forces. It all became the same people with the same message, the same opinion. Where opposing forces have gone, there is no balance within the media. And in my media degree is, what was the purpose of the media? First questions, and you've a media degree as well in journalism. It was, what is the role of journalism and media? It's called the government to account and politicians to account, and you must have a balance.
Yeah.
And to inform the people as well.
Absolutely,
not to narrow the information stream,
And it's about giving everybody a voice and telling the political story. And everybody, every candidate deserves airtime.
Yeah.
Every candidate who puts their name out there deserves airtime. We've had people who's completely refused to come on because we're giving other people platforms and opinions and things. And you know what I say? That's their choice. No, and I suppose really, Paul and I started off just thinking, will it work? 3 years in
3 years September, yeah.
And so thank you guys, and thank you for that
very much.
compliment. We don't know. We actually don't know. We keep going, well, what are we doing? Is it worth it? Is people listening?
It's working, yeah. No, it's going well. I can say
Thanks
that.
very much.
No problem, lads. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much indeed.
Thank
I
you,
really
Stephen.
appreciate that.
Thanks.
And thank you, Stephen, so much indeed.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
And thank you, the listeners and the viewers, for taking the time to watch the Irish Political Roundup with Paul and myself. And if anybody likes what we're doing, as Stephen said, do get in touch and just let us know.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you soon.